All right, welcome to episode 3 of Project Down. I am Tanner Guzzi here with Brandon King, and today we want to talk about a tweet that I saw the other day, right?
Yeah, something you sent me.
Find my phone here and pull this up real quick. Okay, because obviously as we're talking about all this stuff related to self-development, and we're not the only guys who are doing this.
Right.
There are plenty of other people who are out there. There are guys who are much better suited to this whole idea than we are. This is not a new topic, but there's a tweet that I saw that kind of brought things into perspective that I thought was really interesting. Okay, it's from a guy. It's at Western Mastery.
We'll put it right.
Yes, right
Here.
there. Yes. Okay. And he says the real way to self-improve is to do something like train for a fight or build a business. Reading books and crap is all right, but for most it becomes an excuse not to act.
Sure.
And that's certainly been something that I've not only experienced myself, but I've seen around other guys.
Right.
But as much as you agree, you also you're not quite fully on board with that.
Tell me what attracted. Like it's seemingly obvious what he says, but
Right.
tell me what you found so profound about it.
Okay, what I think what I like most about it is that a lot of guys can get into the habit of LARPing self-development, where it's I'm going to get my morning routine really dialed. I'm going to start journaling. I've got a whole shelf of all these self-development books, and I've got my Audible subscription, and I do a new one every month. But the things that they do don't really require a lot of pain, a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of risk, or anything else like that. It's just maybe a little bit of discomfort.
Right.
And so they do develop and they get a little bit better, but it's only incrementally because the amount of pain or work or sacrifice that goes into it isn't enough to really catalyze them into a different level.
Right. So yeah, I think what I agree with is the part where he says that it's not about theory, right? You learn by doing, and anyone who's ever had a task to complete and is over their head and just dove right in. Yeah, they learned more than reading a book or taking a course or watching a Pluralsight video or whatever about it. That part is certainly true.
Yeah, nobody's going to argue with that part.
No one's going to argue with that part.
Okay.
The beef I have is that this seems like a prime example of just the echo chambery, like bitter, absolutist type of mindset that just permeates Twitter.
Well, it is Twitter.
It is Twitter.
But I agree with that, where it's, I'm on this level, and if you're not on this level with me and you haven't fought or ridden a bull or built an 8-figure business, then really you're just playing pretend and get on my level.
And I guess that's what...
And I don't think Sean's saying it that way.
Well, it is a little bit like, what, we're mad at people for reading books now?
Yeah, right?
If someone's reading books, they're reading books. Like, maybe they'll get around to building a business. Maybe they'll get around to taking a fight.
But what if they don't?
At least, I mean, is reading a book better than, they're not on WoW?
Okay, so you're saying then that it's like a spectrum.
Sure, yeah. I think reading any of these books you've got back here, a Stephen Covey book's probably better than if all you did was read.
Yes, this shelf is better than my fantasy novel shelf.
Not even literature. All of those, all a spectrum, but it's all of those, in my opinion, are probably better than being on your raid with your horde on World of Warcraft. Right. And if that's all you did.
Okay, wait. Okay. Why? Why is that better?
Because even if it's in your head, it's in your head. Like the mental aspect of reading and knowing the theory behind self-improvement or whatever it is you're reading.
Okay.
I think is at least enriching you or getting you somewhere mentally more so than other activities, right? Good, better, best, but...
Right, okay. To counter that argument, though, I can make the argument, okay, we're now jumping into this example of playing World of Warcraft, which did you play? I never played World of Warcraft. I played Halo. That's what I was into.
It seems largely indefensible to me. So
okay, good. So we can just jump on that.
I'm happy to hold that up.
Okay, so let's run with that. The arguments that I would make, and I think that a lot of other people would make for reading or for playing World of Warcraft over reading, maybe it's not quite as defensible when you're talking about self-development books or other things like the encyclopedia or other stuff that's, not just trash like 50 Shades of Grey or anything else. But there's a social aspect of it.
I knew that was coming.
Right? And wait. Okay. But there's also the component of I don't know if you can really make this argument. I think they can. I'm on the fence about this. But at least when you're playing a video game, you're doing something as opposed to just passively being given something. I don't know how I feel about that, because it's sitting around playing with your thumbs, even though your brain is being tricked into, I just saved the maiden and killed the bad guy and everything else like that. It feels like it's accomplishment.
I don't want to demonize video games.
No, we love video games.
They're an easy target.
I freaking love video games. I play them. Yeah, fantastic. I'll see you in a month when I finish Breath of the Wild.
Right. Sure.
No, but I think that there is an interesting... I don't know the right answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, do you not see like some mental exercise in reading and just...
I do. Okay, so that's a good point, because with reading, you have to be understanding what you're reading. I'm sure you've done this, where for me it was always college textbooks or the novels that I had to read in high school or anything, where I would be 6 pages into something and not have an idea of a single word that I read. There was just nothing that had stuck in my mind. And so I was not engaged. I was passively consuming the words, but I wasn't engaged. Right. And even then, the ability to make connections, to visualize what the author is talking about, I would say, okay, that's a good point. I would say that is being just as active as creating or being involved or something else when it comes to playing video games.
Yeah, and obviously there are people who get, and I'm not saying all, like, I think this is specific to self-improvement books in some sense, right? Like, I mean, Brandon Sanderson, they're great books by all accounts, but there are people who do isolate themselves from the world, dig into these books.
Yes.
And it does become too much, right? Right. Probably in a way that could be fairly compared to the way some people get into WoW.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Where they just isolate, hermits, they're just reading their books.
Let me have my escapism.
Yeah, exactly.
But do you not see that people do that when it comes to always reading and never really acting on self-development books, especially because they can then trick themselves into thinking, I'm actually doing something, I'm actually making myself better, whereas at least these other guys will just say, no, my life sucks, I'm just trying to escape it in as many ways as I can.
No, yeah, I don't think the defeatist attitude is justifiable.
Right.
I think that having the...
But at least it's honest.
Honestly defeated?
Yeah, and I don't know if that's better or not.
Better than,
hey, I am defeated, but I'm convincing myself that I'm still doing the right thing. Even
I guess what I'm saying is I don't know that they are defeated. If you are reading the theory, reading the principles, yeah. And I think that the hope is, I just think that it's harsh to criticize someone for reading and learning the principles without acting and making the assumption that they never will. Okay.
And is harsh a bad thing?
Harsh isn't. It can be unjustified.
Okay.
Unfair.
Okay. So unjustified harshness, or, and again, it's Twitter. We know that's right. Kind of, it's like going in and boxing as opposed to doing other stuff where you just expect things to be a little bit more brash than they are with a lot of other social media. That's why I'm on there. Right. And so I certainly agree with that. And I don't think that if I had a brother who was really into reading self-development books, that if we were driving, I'd say, well, dude, you're not really doing anything. You're just LARPing. You haven't really done anything until you really train for a fight or you build a business or something
and
else.
I guess that's the other argument the other stance I would take is, do you have to do something as extreme as, taking fights or starting businesses? Even I know those shouldn't be viewed as maybe extreme, but they are, for most people, that would be a big step.
But I think that's the point that he's making, is that you have to do something extreme in order to actually have it be enough of a catalyst for there to be any sort of real change to it. Because anything else that you can kind of fit into your life, as opposed to some extent shaping your life around it, at least from my experience, doesn't create... Well, it certainly doesn't create as much change, and maybe over a longer period of time and incrementally you can get to a decent level of change. But I know for me, when I was training for my boxing fight, I've never trained for anything harder in my life.
Right.
And what that did within that short period of time, as far as my mindset, my physicality, and everything else, was much bigger than anything else I had done for a longer period of time on a smaller scale.
Right. But don't you think that just by virtue of reading and internalizing what they've said, subconsciously even, some of their everyday actions, their everyday interactions with people will be influenced for the better?
Yes and no.
Like,
okay.
maybe they won't start taking a fight.
Right.
But, maybe when someone says something mean to them on the train, someone flips them off on their commute, they'll take it differently.
I think that I for the most part, I do want to give people the benefit of the doubt on that. However, I do think that there's a certain group of people. I had one of my young men who was like this. One of my things that I would do in the neighborhood that I was living in before is we would mentor these young men. And there was this one kid who was incredibly intelligent, super intelligent, read a bunch of stuff, was very, very well versed on everything. And when we would do things like play basketball or play dodgeball or something else, he understood a lot of the theory and a lot of the strategies. No coordination whatsoever.
Right.
And so all he would do is yell at all the other young men about, you're doing this wrong, you can't do this right, you should have passed to him, why didn't you throw the ball there? And then as soon as you get the ball to him, he just throws it against the backboard as hard as he can, because that's all he's physically capable of doing.
The opposite of what he just told everyone.
Exactly. And so his ability to understand did not meet his ability to execute, and he lived in this kind of bubble where then that meant that as long as I don't ever have to actually show the dissonance, then I can continue to demonstrate my value by just telling other people what to do.
Right.
And so I think that there's a minority there.
Right.
But I do think that that's a trap that a lot of these self-development minded people can fall into is, let me tell you about all these great things that you should be doing better because you're not happy. Doesn't matter that I'm not doing any of them because I understand the principles and you don't.
Right. So what's like maybe to just hold on to something a little bit more concrete. What's like a book what's a classic self-development book that we can hold up here?
I don't know. Geez, you're putting me on the spot with that.
Or what does he pull up the tweet? What does he say? He says books or...
I think he just said books, but let's find it again. Yeah, he just says books. And he says, but for most it becomes an excuse not to act. Okay, so maybe not I doubt that there are any self-development books, but one example that I've gone back to before is I've talked about ideas like this is you read a book about how to swim.
Sure.
Okay, and then do you know how to swim if you never actually get in the water?
No. And I've done this before, right? Like I've gotten down the YouTube rabbit hole of like I got really into like bike packing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Did I ever go bike packing? No. But for a while, it was really fun to think that I was going to go bike packing. And I guess what he's saying is that there are people who just eternally just get sucked up in this cycle of reading and internalizing or whatnot a certain subject and then never do it. Is that kind of the idea?
And I think that even where you and I come from slightly, because I think we agree on the idea that let it be one step on the journey.
Right.
And I think maybe one of the reasons why you and I come at it from a little bit of a different angle is even just the communities that we're involved in.
Right.
Because for you, where you are with guys at work and stuff like that, outside of the guys within the rut, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're around a lot more like normie kind of guys. And so getting them to go from Netflix and video games to actually reading self-development is a step in the right direction.
Depends on the guy.
Right. Depends on the guy, but some exposure to that.
Some exposure, certainly.
Okay. And I have a lot of that too. And then at the same time, when I interact with other guys online who are very much part of this online tribe and this group of, we're here, the guys who are listening to this are listening to this because they have already made that jump. They're interested in self-development. It's not just, I don't care, I just want to be comfortable.
Right.
Those are the kind of guys who they can make the jump from A to B, but get trapped at B instead of going from C to D and all the way down the rest of the line. And so you have to get to point B, but you can't stop there and think that as long as I'm no longer at point A, I've completed the journey and I'm good to go.
Okay, so what are I guess, because he's holding up taking a fight and starting a business, and I guess that's still where I come back to getting trapped. So here's a book, like The Obstacle is the Way, right? Like Ryan Holiday. One of those books. Like he doesn't advocate for maybe necessarily taking a fight or starting a business, but he talks more about it in terms of a mindset and how you approach the obstacles that you encounter at your job whatever it is, your family life, your health, whatever. None of those, all of those things are things that you can put into practice without taking these big steps. I guess what I don't understand is also how come people, I don't know this guy's name.
Sean. Yeah.
Why people like Sean hold up these big accomplishments like we just like almost like fetishize the fight thing and the start a business thing. You hear that so much, right? Like, is that what you have to, is a self-improved person one who fights a lot and starts businesses?
Yes, that's it. It's the only way to be a man in the 21st century is you have to fight people and start businesses.
I just think
But no, you're right. That does get, those two get put on pedestals a lot.
Right. And I think that there are ways to implement self-improvement principles that you read in these books in a way that, the whatever percent, 99% of people in this country who aren't business owners and who aren't fighters.
Yeah. And not everybody needs to be those things.
Can still see valuable improvements in their lives.
Yes. Okay. So let me ask you this. Okay, I guess I have two questions, and we'll see after we answer the first one if we even can circle back around to the second one, because that's how these go. But the first one is, why have you not, what would stop you, whether it's a desire, a lack of desire, a fear, or something else, but what would prevent you from starting a business, taking a fight yourself? Why is that appeal not there for you?
No, I don't think that it's not.
Okay.
I don't think that it's not.
Okay.
But do I think that needs to be the end objective for
Holy crap, no.
for every single purpose,
or even for the guys who do that? I have done both,
right.
And it's not like I can now say, okay, my self-improvement journey is now complete.
Yeah, and maybe that's like what gets me, right? Is because I haven't ever started a business nor taken a fight. That he holds those things, but I do consider myself someone who strives to be better and improve. That he holds those two things up. That says, if you haven't done these things, you're a LARPer, right? And I think you can improve in the realm that you're currently operating. Yeah. And if that's the end, and you become excellent in those realms that aren't fighting and aren't entrepreneurship, success. It's worthwhile.
Totally. Well, and maybe this is just we have different interpretations of the tweet because, and I love that we're now going to be like a 30-minute show just based on one tweet, by the way.
I love it.
But the way that I interpreted it was not that these are the only two options, but these are two of the more extreme options that when you participate in something like that, where the risk and the reward are both very high, then it does make it easier to juxtapose that against something else that can then feel like LARPing. Because I would imagine if we were to have Sean on the show, he would not say, yep, that's it. You have to take a fight. Yeah, right. We could do that. Yeah. You have to take a fight. You have to build a business. Other than that, you're just goofing around and you're not. I don't. That's not the way that I interpret it. Whereas those are two very understandable, extreme examples, but it doesn't have to just be those.
And this comes back to the thing that we've talked about, right? Is how do you identify somebody who's improving and taking themselves seriously? Someone who's taking fights, someone who's starting businesses, like those both require an enormous amount of initiative, right? And you can point those out, and maybe that is why they're easy things to say, is because they're easy things to identify. And something that I'd like to explore further is like, what short of these things is there something short of these, what I'll call extreme cases? Are they extreme? I don't know. What
for most men now, absolutely. For men 100 years ago, not so much.
Right. These extreme cases. I mean, can you identify yourself? Can you self-identify as a improvement-minded person unless you do these things, or are these the marks of?
No, I don't think so. I think that you can very much identify and qualify as a self-development minded man without ever having to engage in physical combat or build a business.
And I guess that's something that maybe I'd like to explore throughout this project, right? Because like what are the things what are the tangible things that you can identify that aren't this extreme? Right. For us personally, as well as identifying other people, or there needs to be some metric, something that you can gauge.
Right. Especially because you can't. If you take most guys who are asleep and live a passive life and you say the only way that something is viable is if it's fighting or business, they're not going to do it. And they're not going to jump to that. And so it is a natural progression, even for you to say, no, I'm not opposed to doing either one of those. I'm not disinterested in either one of those.
Sure.
maybe 5 years ago. I know for me, the answer 5 years ago would have been, I'm terrified to start a business and I don't really have an interest. Plus I'm terrified to engage in any sort of physical combat.
Right.
And both of those have changed for me over the years. And they changed because of a progression of self-development that was very real
Right.
and very actualized. I wasn't just LARPing, but I didn't immediately go from I'm asleep at the wheel to doing one of these more extreme things.
Right. And I guess I think we've reached yes.
Uh-huh.
We've come to the point where I think we're on the same page in that I think you understand that it was the hot take of the hot take mentality of Twitter that of course bothered me.
Yes.
But when you get down to the spirit of the tweet, probably we all agree.
Totally. Yeah. And that's, I think that's what's fun about it. And it's a fun challenge to look at. Okay, so what else is there?
Right.
What's more extreme than that? In 5 years, are we going to say unless you're conquering nations,
right,
and you're Genghis Khan, and you've got 5% of the world population that can trace itself back to your bloodline, you're just LARPing self-development?
Right.
Of course not. Right? That sounds silly and stupid and extreme. But obviously, for the guys who are at whatever this extreme level is, there's still something else beyond that.
Right.
And so what do those gradations look like? And how do you get yourself to the point where the things that were scary or not necessarily, they were just uninteresting because they seem so far out of your realm.
Right.
How do you get yourself to the point where that does become part of what your realm is?
Right.
Because you don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to do one of these things.
No, I think you start by reading the books.
Exactly.
Right? Which is
right. You start by somebody telling you that you don't look as good as you think you do,
right,
or you get passed over so many times by a razor. So you recognize
right,
the negative aspects
you see
of
that
it.
family picture. Where,
exactly. Yep.
You don't look as good as you thought you did.
But then you're right. You start off by, okay, I'm gonna read these books, or I'm gonna get that gym membership, right, or I'm gonna buy this program. And as long as you don't just turn that into its own level of hamster wheel of, I'm now a self-development guy, I'm now improving, but you're just always at that same level.
Right.
Then I think that's where the problem is.
And that's the spirit of the tweet, right?
Yep, absolutely. Okay, cool. Well, now that we've solved that problem, but I'm going to be curious to hear what you guys think, especially what I would like to know is from the guys who are listening and the guys who are watching is, what was it, both the catalyst, was there some major negative that happened that it's like, okay, this is where I got to really get started? For me, it was when I got divorced. Uh-huh. And for a lot of guys, it is a big thing like that, where it's like everything about your world gets totally broken down. It forces you to recollect and rejig everything else and just try and figure that out. But for a lot of other guys, it may be something that's more subtle or less devastating.
Right.
So what was that? How did you start doing it? And what were the measurable, like what was the goal that you were trying to pursue?
I'd love to hear what people think are the measurable, and maybe it's different for every person. Like, what are the metrics that you measure either somebody else or yourself against to say that you're improving as a person?
Yes.
Maybe those have to be self-identified, right? Like maybe it depends.
I would agree with that. And that's where you can get into kind of the dangerous territory of you do you and follow your truth and all that crap. But I do think when it comes to self-development, for somebody, it may be fitness. For somebody, it may be financial. It may be relationship. It may be something else. But we're all at very different things. Not everybody's going to go through a divorce, or not everybody's going to see that family photo and go, crap, where did my weight go? Or not everybody's going to have to file for bankruptcy and realize that their mindset around money is totally screwed up. And so those are all things that can lead to very measurable change and measurable improvement. And hopefully what happens for most men with this is you go, sweet, this was crap. I fixed it. Now what else in my life can I fix and make even better?
Right, optimize, yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Okay, cool. So we want to hear that from you guys. Let us know what it was for you that started it, what that catalyst was, what were the measurable things that you did, how it got started. Was it books, or was it a podcast? Was it a program? Was it a YouTube video or anything else? For some guys, it may have been something as simple as the washer broke down, and rather than hiring some guy, I watched a YouTube video and I figured out, freak, I can do this myself. What else can I do? So let us know what that is, and I'll be curious to hear that from you guys.
Right.
So
for sure,
we're going to call that for this episode, and we'll talk to you guys on the next one.
Bye-bye.